clock comes out of the storage box and slides on top of the pole, and you lock in the slides. Okay. Then you need to hook up your power cable and your data cable to the back of the clock. The power cable goes into the bottom plug and it has 3 pins, like so. And the data cable has 5 pins and goes into the top plug. The middle plug is not used for this event. Then you need to hook up the power cable. We have red and the black. The red goes to the positive terminal of the battery and the black goes to the negative terminal. So when the clock's powered on, it will first display a version number, and then it will start counting down through all the digits just to do a test, and then it will start counting up from 0. It will not display the correct rally time until the clocks have been set. Once the clocks have been set, these are the TAG Heuer chrono printers. These will be set by the timing vehicles. Once they've been set, you can get the other end of the grey cable, which has a little white extension on it to hook into the clock, and plug that cable into the computer port on the back of the clock. So that plugs into the computer slot on the back of the clock. And once you've done that, the clock will then display the correct time from this chrono printer. Now the beams that run across the line here, at the start lines they only judge a jump start. So they're set half a metre in front of the start line, as you can see here. When the light beams are lined up, there's one on a tripod on either side of the road. When they are lined up, there's a little signal light on the back of the beam on this side of the road, which is the control official side. That light will go out, which signifies that they're lined up and ready to go for competition. When the light beams are lined up, the red light for signal will go off. The yellow cable, which is provided in the kit, connects up to the black and green ports on there. All the cables are colour coded, and this connects up to the chrono printer to provide the input from the start line. So on the chrono printer, the other end of the yellow cable connects into input 1 on the clock. So we have green to green and black to black. And then when the cars go through, they will then print out a time, and you should hear a beep on the clock to signify that it's printed out a time. So to test that the chrono printers are working, you can just break the beam with your hand, and you'll hear a beep every time that the beam breaks, and it will print a time out on the paper roll. Okay, once your clocks are set and ready to go and have been tested, it's best to place the beam input on a block so you don't unnecessarily waste paper. To do that, you press the red button down here that corresponds to number 1, and when you have 3 bars on the display, if you walk through the beam or course cars go through, they will not print off times and waste paper. But when you're ready for competition, if you press the red button, the 3 bars will disappear and be replaced by a number, and then any cars that go through will break the beam and print out a time. Generally, you can just leave this clock to run by itself. If this clock turns off or has a fault, you have a backup clock which is identical. You just unplug and then plug the cables into the other clock, and then you go from there. You only need to reference this clock when there is a jump start, but we'll cover that a bit later on. As with the start line control, we have a pair of light beams that are set up across the road. Here at the Flying Finish, we usually like to have them a little bit further away from the side of the road because the rally cars come past at high speed. So we like to have them further away from the edge of the road so the rally cars don't knock them over. Here it's about a metre or 2, but they can be up to 10-15 metres away from the road if need be. To set them up, it's exactly the same as before. You screw them onto the top of the tripods and then plug the yellow cable, which goes to the clock, into the back of the main beam, and it's green to green and black to black for the terminals. And once they're lined up, the signal light on the back of the beam will go off, and then you can test that by using your hand and just breaking the beam. When you put your hand in front, the little red light will come on and then go off again when you remove your hand. Dial on the back can be adjusted to suit conditions. This means the amount of time between breaking of the beam and how often it will report a car going through. At the moment it is set on just under 1 second, so it'll only report a car going through every second. It won't get anything quicker than that. If you find the cars coming through a bit quicker, you can turn it down to sort of half a second. But usually on dirt with the dust, we like to leave it at about a second so it won't get multiple inputs. Here at the Flying Finish, your position at the table is determined by your setup plans. We're fairly close to the edge of the road here, but on the rally you may be 20-30 metres back further from the edge of the road. So we will give you enough cable to set up according to your plans, but you have two clocks here and we use both of them together. This one here, which I have the cable plugged into, which is the Tag Heuer 520 clock, this is the primary clock, and the other clock we have here, this is your backup clock. As the cars come through, they will automatically, when the car breaks the beam, it will automatically print a time, and as the primary timekeeper, your job is to press the number 2 button as the car breaks, so you will get 2 times print out onto the paper roll, and if you're the backup timekeeper, you press the number 2 green button on your clock, and that prints out a time for where the car goes through. Now, the idea there is you use the automatic time off input 1 here normally. If you have a fault with the beams, you then revert to input 2 on this clock, and if this clock has a fault, you then revert over to the backup clock using that time. As the car comes through, I don't have a pen with me, but you can feed up the paper roll by pushing the feed button just enough, and then if you write the car number onto the paper roll, we can then go through and check all the results off if you don't get any other paperwork done. To unblock the beams, you press the red button here, which will change that from 3 bars to a number. It doesn't matter if it doesn't say number 1, but when the rally car comes through, you press the number 2 button at the same time, and if you feed up the paper, you will notice you get 2 times printed. You get a number 1, which is your automatic time, and you get an M2, which is the manual time. The time you transmit through to the stop point is always the number 1 time. Unless the beams don't work or don't trigger, then you use the M2 time, and if this clock fails completely, you can then revert to the backup clock, which you can also connect the yellow beams into input 1, and the unblock button on this clock is a black button, not a green button, not a red button like the other one. But as the car comes through on the backup clock, you just press the green button for number 2, and that will feed a printer time. To feed the paper on this clock, you press the feed button and let it feed a couple of times, and then you'll get the time. And if you write the car number on the paper roll next to that, then we have a record of the car numbers on the clock rolls. At the end of the rally, when the car's finished, you feed up the paper and you tear it off, and you give this paperwork to the sweep vehicle that comes through to collect all your paperwork after the rally.